This past weekend, my brother and I hopped on a boat and we went over to Vancouver Island to play in a Warhammer doubles tournament. Now, this was my very first time playing doubles in Warhammer, and it was my brother's first tournament period, and so there was a lot of learning that had to go on. There was things that we had to navigate in terms of how to play together, but also how to play against two entire other armies. Now, this tournament was billed as a casual fundraiser, a place to bring new players for people to come and get together and play some Warhammer, but not in a truly competitive way. And that was perfect for us because we really wanted to take it easy and just kind of get the lay of the land, especially for my brother, who was going to be walking into a friendly local gaming store to play Warhammer for the first time ever, let alone a practice game, just going straight into a tournament. And so this video is going to cover how that experience went. So I'll probably hit this with some timestamps so you can navigate your way around the video, but we'll start by talking about the prep that went into the tournament, because there were no maps revealed ahead of time, and I think that played into the casual nature of this tournament. And so we had to try and figure out how we could practice deployment with our armies, and really there's no better way to do that than with Tabletop Simulator. And so we just picked random maps from the GHB. We just took turns deploying our armies onto those maps using the software. And we just did this over the course of a few nights on talking on mic. And that was a really cool way to prep for the tournament. So we had a general idea of the shape of what our armies were going to look like. And so, by the way, we picked that I would be playing Cities of Sigmar and my brother would be playing Iron Jaws, and specifically he was going to run a Iron Jaws infantry list. And so that looked like 10 groups of reinforced brutes, or sorry, 10 packs, a reinforced brute, 2 of those, a war chanter, 3 Gorgonchas, and then I had a whole whack of cities units, but a real shooting corps, so 20 Fusiliers, Fusil Major, and Cannon. But then we also had the Wildercorp Hunters, Command Corps, Foot Marshal, and then also the Alchemite Warforgers. So I could bring quite a bit in 1,000 points for Cities of Sigmar. And so the game plan here was that he would be the castle wall and I would be behind the castle wall shooting, but we also had some scouting units or skirmishing units available as well through my Command Corps and through the Wildercorp Hunters that gave us some flexibility. And so this is kind of what we practiced, and we were always having him deploy first and me deploy afterwards, thinking we'll hide where the shooting is. But we actually quickly realized that that's actually the wrong way to go about it, because you generally want your shooting in the middle so that it can have the most play. And the way that it works too with so many different armies deploying, that you really don't know sometimes where big threats are going to drop. So putting down those big groups of brutes later was actually really important so that we could kind of match, where some big threats might come charging across the battlefield. And we didn't do a good job matching up in some matches. So we'll talk about that when I actually talk about the games. But one other fun thing that we did was that we came up with some lore for our armies, and we named all of our characters. We talked about kind of why our armies would even be playing together. Why would you have Cities of Sigmar and Iron Jaws? And so I actually had this idea after I listened to an episode of Garage Hammer where we would make a pamphlet that we would hand out to our opponents. And so I wrote some lore for my Cities of Sigmar army. I wrote some lore for the Iron Jaws, and then I connected them with a little story about how they came together. There was a little about us as players section, and also featured both our army lists so that people could check those out if they wanted to. And honestly, it was so much fun to write this. I really enjoyed it, and I'm actually looking forward to finding some time to flesh out a full 2K list lore that I can use for other tournaments. People seem to enjoy it as well, and even if they didn't, just the process was so much fun that I have zero regrets about taking the time to do that and then actually print it out. And so I've probably cut it into the footage here and put it up on screen for you to check out already. But really, the idea here, if you don't read the lore and pause and read the lore, is that my cities were on a crusade. They had fought through many battles already. They had lost most of their forces, which is why just my 1,000 points were left. Meanwhile, Jack's orcs had been kind of rampaging around Gur, but they had found a realm gate over to Akshi, and that's where they were able to run into my army. But the leader of like the war chanter of Jack's army had seen a vision. Basically, he had found a shard of malice when they were attacking some humans in Gur, and it had shown him the future where he'd have some really strange orcs joining up in his Wa. And as he starts to charge my city's army, my army decides they're going to try to just join the Wa as a last desperate, like, ditched effort to try and survive. And because of the vision that his orc had, we joined together and my cities become part of the Wa, and that's why we're all fighting together in this tournament, because we are like one big group. So otherwise, we had to travel for this tournament. We got up at 4:50 a.m., which is pretty early, to catch the first ferry to the island. I definitely needed a couple cups of coffee. Driving was a dream both ways, though, like on the way there and on the way back home, because it was just really early or really late. And so we didn't really have any trouble with that. I would definitely come back to this store for like a GT, maybe an RTT. I don't know. Like one day is... It's a big day, right? Like staying a night would be nice, and then like going out for dinner, drinks or something. But we arrived at the store. Everybody there was super nice. We talked to a few other players that were near us and talked about their armies and some of their paint jobs and stuff. I met the organizer, Scott, and he was super friendly and did a really great job organizing this event and keeping everybody on track. The round time for this event was 2 hours and 45 minutes, which hypothetically, if you have, 1,000 point armies, you can get through the rounds pretty quickly. But then also because it was a new player tournament, that was going to be a really tough time to stick to. And so we'll kind of see how that goes when we talk about these different matches. So match 1 was against Jonah and Ken, who were on Slaves to Darkness and Lumineth Realm Lords. And so we all had a laugh about how Jack, Jonah, and Ken were all playing their first ever tournament, which made me the expert with only a single tournament under my belt. I was the experienced player, I guess. And so we all worked together to set up the table, because I realized quickly that that had to be me to initiate that, because they had never played in a tournament before. I looked at their lists and I immediately realized that we had quite a bit of trouble on our hands here, because they had essentially like an alpha pin Slaves of Darkness and a super fast Wind Temple Lumineth list, and it just immediately exposed the flaw in our list building scheme, where we had no mobility in this list to contest the board, and we were going to get, get into trouble because of that. So Slaves of Darkness slammed into us in turn 1, and then Lumineth Realm Lords zipped around the map scoring. And although we were able to kind of stabilize, the shooting did really well against Slaves of Darkness, and we killed one of the foxes on our turn. I think that we're never going to mathematically catch up in terms of scoring, or be able to, if they focused on scoring, the game was pretty much over, and we had a hard time, partly because of our deployment, but the matchup was also just really, not so great. But either way, because of the nature of this match, so many new players, we actually only got through the first battle round, and then we got through the first turn of the second battle round, and then we had to call it right there. So definitely was a slower game, but that's totally cool, because it was new players that were learning about the game, tournaments, and each other's armies, and how to play their own army more optimally. And so a lot of learning was done, and we were all really happy, and our opponents couldn't have been nicer. Match 2 was against Ian and Scott on Soulblight Gravelords and Sons of Bahamut. And so in round 2 here, we were matched up against the TO, and we had a major deployment error. I've never played against either of these armies before, and they did tell us that they could run in charge with one of the Gargants, but I just really misjudged that and how much damage it would do. So I tried to screen with the Wildercorp Hunters, and that Sons of Bahamut, Gargant was able to come across, smash through the Wildercorp Hunters, and tag my shooting. And by the time we got to my turn, I had no Fusiliers left. And most of our shooting, like I missed with the cannon. And by the way, the cannon hadn't hit at all at that point in the tournament, which was pretty funny. But we basically had lost right there, lost in deployment, lost in turn 1. And so we had tons of time to play out the game. And so we did. We played out almost the entire game, only talking it out in turn 5, even though it was kind of a formality. And this allowed our opponents to work on their scoring and kind of work through their strategy. But it also allowed Jack and I to work on some personal goals of ours by, you know, trying to take down a Gargant, trying to take down like Radikar the Beast, etc., that had grieved us with some of the, you know, the kills they had gotten. So I made it a personal, you know, a personal vendetta to go after a certain unit, and we turned the game into like kind of a different goal. Rather than win the game, let's achieve this objective. And so it was a very fun match, and I think it very much had the potential not to be a fun match when you get kind of shellacked like that. But despite it being so one-sided, because our opponents were so friendly, they were so nice, because we were talking the whole time, because we kind of adjusted our mindset as the game shifted into that one-sided affair. It was really easy to have fun, and so I think that was like a really good lesson to have, and more valuable than a win could have been. And so like super happy with how that went. Looking back, we really should have put some brutes between the shooting and the Gargants, because I think putting a full like 41 shots into a Gargant would have been helpful at the very least. But then we would have lost a lot of brutes. Like one of those brutes got like melted in a single turn anyway. And so, you know, it's definitely a tough matchup when you've never played against it before. Match 3 was against Tyson and Hayden with their Seraphon and Iron Jaws. And so in this tournament, we played against 6 different armies, and 4 of those are ones that we are or our close friends own. And so that meant that we didn't get to learn a lot about new armies, but at the end of the day, we were very comfortable going into this final matchup because our friend David plays Seraphon, and he also plays Slaves to Darkness. And so we had some familiarity with what people were actually playing, and obviously Jack plays Iron Jaws, and so that made us pretty familiar with them. And so this game was dominated by our shooting, and specifically our opponent's reluctance to engage with it. And so this was paired with some really unfortunate dice rolling by Tyson, the Seraphon player, who missed at least one big charge and then another crucial redeploy to deny a battle tactic. And so we played most of this game out. We did have to talk it out in the end, but because we had so much going for us at the time, we decided that we were going to win the game. My army was fully intact, you know, at that point of the game. I hadn't been attacked at all, but the game still was very, very tight, and there was definitely a way back into it. And especially if those dice rolls hadn't been pretty egregious at the beginning, then the scoring would have been even closer. But at the end of the day, I kind of had free reign to move the castle up as much as we wanted, and then get some full volleys into their units, wiping some Agrodons and going, you know, nuts into some brutes, and it put us in a really powerful position. Our opponents really needed to engage us earlier and kind of force our hand to, you know, hopefully tag or, you know, even get into some of the shooting. And so really, because they didn't engage with us, it gave us the confidence to just kind of move up the field and screen better. I was really proud of myself for this match, specifically because our opponents were running a Hunters of Huanchi, and I just did a really good job of zoning out the backcourt so they could never really get into a place to deep strike us from behind. And I worked really hard with my manifestations and my like Wildercorp Hunters and other units in order to make that happen, and it just kind of was something that I've been working on, and it was cool to see that I had progressed in that skill. So after the tournament, we said goodbye to all of our opponents that we played that day, and then we were on our way home because we had a ferry to catch. And so the trip home was uneventful. We got the earlier ferry home, which was kind of nice, so we were able to get home earlier, but we were still home at like, I want to say like 10:30 p.m. and so that's a long day. Most of the way back, Jack and I were talking about our strategy, our lists, how we could change things, how we could improve. And even though it was a very long day, both of us were eager for more Warhammer. We were like already planning when we were going to play our next game, which has already happened this week. Spoiler alert, Jack won with his Iron Jaws, and I was playing kind of a dwarf cities list. And we've already signed up for a GT in the new year, also on the island again, but at a different store. And so we're totally hooked on going to these tournaments, and we hope that we can go not only to play in some singles tournaments, but we're hoping for another doubles tournament that we can join forces once again to see if we can fare better. So that's going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed the tournament recap. And if you have any advice for us based on what you heard in here and how we could have, maybe set up our armies, maybe you have an idea for how Ironjawz and Cities of Sigmar could play together, let us know in the comments. And otherwise, I'll see you all soon enough in another video.